What's up, guys? So the best piece of football content I consumed last week was Josh Pate's sit down with Nebraska head coach Matt Rhule. They talked about the future of college football, the death of spring games, the drama that's coming down the pipeline with revenue sharing coming to college football this fall, and the rise of the non-play calling head coach. It's the offseason, so I don't expect you guys to listen to that whole podcast, but I did, and I got 5 big takeaways. Let's get into it. My first takeaway, we've got drama coming with revenue sharing as it comes to college football this fall. What do I mean? I feel like when you hear coaches talk about revenue sharing, which real quick, we're used to players getting paid from NIL and collectives. Well, now it'll come directly from the athletic department as a cutout from their budget. Georgia just announced that it's going to be $13.5 million per year allocated to their roster, in addition to NIL and collectives. Where the drama comes from is twofold. One, how is each coach going to divide that up? How does Kirby Smart pay his edge rushers versus Dan Lanning versus Lincoln Riley? We hear about general managers getting hired. Well, that's going to be part of the game. It's not just about, hey, everyone go try to get 4 and 5 stars. Nah, there's going to be different ways to slice the pie. And then Matt Rhule talked about how he mentioned between 30 and 60 players will get a portion of that revenue sharing. That's the lowest number that I've heard. I've heard most coaches say, hey, it's going to be everyone on the roster, or at least the original allocation of the 85 scholarship guys. But 30 to 60 feels low. But that's interesting in itself, right? If Matt Rhule is going to pay only 30 to 60 guys, well, they'll get a larger chunk than teams that are paying 85 guys as part of their revenue share. What also gets interesting is, are these numbers going to be public? Right now, we have a general idea of what guys make NIL-wise, but we really have no idea. If those numbers are public, that's going to be a dream for an analyst like me because you'll be able to break down the line items. If they're private, that's still going to result in drama because from a negotiation standpoint, if I hop in the portal, I don't really know what my peers are making. It's just, hey, I'm taking their word at face value, but it's not necessarily confirmed. We talk about revenue sharing as if it's going to solve a lot of problems, and it will solve some, but the drama is not slowing down. Takeaway number 2, the death of spring games is here. Matt Rhule made a bunch of news the past week saying, hey, at Nebraska, we're not doing a spring game. You saw USC and Lincoln Riley say the same, and then you saw Sark at Texas say the same. What's most interesting to me is you can make the argument that those 2 guys, really those 3 guys, but Matt Rhule and Lincoln Riley, they benefited from having a spring game more so than really any other coach in recent memory, because when they were first-year head coaches and you come with this initiative that we're going to resurrect a blue blood program and bring them back to national prominence, well, then ESPN wants to showcase your spring game, and it's a huge opportunity to continue the positive momentum and positive energy from when you got hired, but before your first game. Because it's hard if you get hired in December to then wait all the way until August to showcase your roster to the world and to your fan base and recruits. So to me, it's ironic that then those 2 guys are now carrying the torch for not having spring games. And I think it leads to an interesting question of how do first-year head coaches moving forward handle this dynamic? Because I do think it is an asset to rally your fan base, get support, again, build upon that momentum the next time a new head coach comes to a blue blood program, which I think we're going to have a lot more coaching turnover this upcoming December than we did last December. Something to keep your eye on. Billy Napier at Florida said, hey, it's a lose-lose situation. Either I have a spring game and I run the risk of my players getting poached, or I don't have a spring game and I get pushback from my fans for not having something that they're used to taking part in. But how did we get here? Because I find this fascinating. I played from 2013 to 2017. My first spring in 2013, we had a spring game. That was the norm. At the end of my college career, there was more of the spring showcase was how coaches were framing it. And then fast forward another 8 years and the slow death of spring games as we know it. It was escalated 2 years ago with Malik Murphy at Texas under Steve Sarkisian. Texas had their spring game nationally televised. Everyone tuned in to watch Arch Manning in a Texas uniform for the first time, and Malik Murphy balled out. If you believe the reports of what people say, he was given a lot of pressure to hop into the portal right after that spring game and find a new home. He elected to stay at Texas, but then 7 months later, as Texas is in a CFP run, he hops into the portal, Malik Murphy that is, and lands at Duke. Texas is like, well, this sucks. That's our backup quarterback. If something happens to Quinn Ewers while we're trying to go win a natty, that's terrible. But you also can't blame Malik Murphy for hopping into the portal. You also can make the conclusion that without that spring game, I don't know if the pressure to hop into the portal for Malik Murphy would be as extreme. So if you're Sark, you're like, why would I ever showcase my my players again in a spring game. Takeaway number 3, get ready for the rise of the non-play calling head coach. And this one hits close to home for me because Matt Rhule was talking about Fran Brown, former assistant under him at Temple, I believe it was. I called 3 of Syracuse's games under Fran Brown last year, and I saw firsthand what this conversation means. Fran Brown was not a defensive coordinator and was not a previous head coach before Syracuse plucked him to be their head man. That is extremely unique. Usually every new head coach is either a head coach at a lower level school or they're a coordinator that had a bunch of success, which is why that program wants that coach to now be their head man. Fran Brown was a different energy. Fran Brown was an elite recruiter. And nowadays in college football, the most important factor is your ability to recruit and build a roster and motivate players to play at their highest level. But gone are the days of the most important competitive advantage in college football is your ability to get that extra first down and be a notch better play caller. Being able to win in the portal and build a roster, much more important than X's and O's right now. Fran Brown's really the first of this new wave of that type of identity, but don't be surprised if you see more head coaches start getting jobs off the back of being elite recruiters, elite personalities, and having the ability to motivate players and having that in their DNA. Also, real quick, if you're liking this video, I started posting YouTube long form videos this month. Consider hitting the subscribe button down below and like this video. Helps a lot. The next one's a good one because the odds are you're watching this on YouTube, and Matt Rhule mentioned how he is watching YouTube clips in December to see how CFP teams were handling that practice, because that's uncharted territory for head coaches in that the new CFP, now if you make it all the way to the end, that's a 7-8 week process. Coaches are used to bowl season being 4 to 5 weeks. Matt Rhule's like, hey, let me watch YouTube clips and see how coaches are handling. Do they go full pads or do they go shells or do they go no pads at all? Are they doing full on practices early December or are they having a slow burn through the holidays to then ramp up later on? It's fascinating to me because usually in the coaching world, everyone's trying to do things the same way, the structure at least, right? How you handle a Monday versus how you handle a Wednesday, how you handle winter conditioning, it's pretty much the same across programs. But the new structure for the CFP is uncharted territory for all these coaches. So fascinating that Matt Rhule is going to YouTube to see how they do it. And I hear a lot of fans that complain when their head coach closes practice, and it sucks because, you know, we want to get the latest scoop from the beat reporters and whatnot, and we want footage of practice to see what's going on. But this is why head coaches close off media access, because they don't want other head coaches a la Matt Rhule looking at how they're handling their practice and the secrets that might come because of it. And the 5th takeaway, this one's refreshing because it's become a pet peeve for me. Matt Rhule talked about how college is not like the NFL. You hear that all the time since NIL became a thing in college football. It's like, oh, well, now college football is just like the NFL. Yes, guys are getting paid, but that's where the similarities stop. It's 2 totally different structures. There's no true free agency in college football. There's no formal contracts in college football. There's no way to enforce those formal contracts. There's no commissioner in college football. There's no salary cap. There's no players union. There's no collective bargaining agreement. All aspects that make the NFL what it is that don't apply to college football. And so it's convenient to be like, oh, we run our team like an NFL program. I once had a coach tell me that, and I won't say who it was, when I was in a coach's meeting, and I said, all right, coach, like, what does that mean? I always hear coaches say that. What does that mean? And he kind of took a beat and he's like, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of sounds good. Just kind of sounds professional. And I was like, exactly, because it's just a cliche term. It's just it sounds good. It sounds pretty, but college football is not like the NFL. That's a lazy argument. Also, real quick, Matt Rhule and Josh Pate talk about how it's inevitable that the top 40 to 50 programs in college football will break off and create their own league or level or whatever it is. And I feel like it's a very common talking point right now, whether that's 3 years, 5 years, 30 years. You hear a lot of people saying that. But I was curious, like, where is that cutoff? And so I went into ChatGPT and I said, hey, rank the top 60 programs in college football by their average recruiting ranking the past 4 years. That felt like an appropriate metric. And I know it's not perfect, but that would put teams on the outside looking in of SMU, BYU, Purdue, and Indiana. Purdue and Indiana are in the Big Ten. Are they actually going to get left out of that hypothetical situation? Is BYU and their supportive fan base actually going to get left left out of that. SMU, they're on the rise. My point is it's convenient to say that, the 40 to 50 team breakoff, but can you imagine those fan bases not being in the show? When you frame it that way, it's hard to envision that kind of world. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot if you hit that like button and the subscribe button as well. If you're like, yo, I have no idea who you are, it's all good. The algorithm will feed you another one of my videos here shortly. And if you make it to the end of one of those, then you got to hit the subscribe button. Thanks, guys.